It's going to be the biggest thing since the French Revolution. It's going to be unbelievably ugly. You got 7 billion chimpanzees out there, and they're going to be, this is a whole different speech. I don't want to go into that. But I don't see any way around it now. There's, even if I was elected President of the United States, there's absolutely nothing that could be done right now. If Ron Paul was elected President of the US, the first thing that would happen was he'd have a sit-down with the heads of the NSA, the FBI, the CIA, the DEA, and all these other Praetorian agencies, and maybe overtly, but definitely in an understandable way, they'd make it clear to them that things aren't going to change. So you can't turn this around. Well, not only the heads of these agencies and the government, the Supreme Court, if Ron Paul tried to turn things around, if through some miracle, and it would be a miracle, literally he was in office, the Supreme Court would knock down the changes that he'd want to make, the Congress would pass new laws, and the people would riot. So you can forget about it. There's absolutely zero political hope. I'm not trying to be a pessimist, I'm just telling you this is the way the world works. So, how's this all gonna come unglued? Well, one of the reasons why, despite what I've just said about capital and savings and technology, one of the reasons why the US has done as well as it has over the last 20 or 30 years is because our major export has been dollars. It's been wonderful. We've shipped about 7 trillion US dollars outside the US, and those nice Japanese send us Sonys and Toyotas, and the nice Germans send us Audis and Mercedes. That's a great trade, come on. And it's propped up the standard of living in this country. But the problem is this, we've actually reached the point where these people are starting to look at each other, and they realize that this is like that game where the music stops. If you don't have a chair, you're screwed, okay? It's a shell game. So they're trying to get rid of these dollars. So there's going to be an absolutely catastrophic financial panic at some point in the next few years, I suspect, pretty soon. And what's going to happen to those dollars? Nobody outside the US, apart from custom and convenience, has to accept the US dollar. The only place you have to accept the US dollar is back in the US. So they're going to come back to the US. The dollars come back in, the title to companies, and the wheat, and the computers, and the Boeings are going to go out. And this is going to be a real problem, but it's absolutely inevitable that it's going to happen. Well, there's a lot more. Because as you know, for some years now, the government has been engaging in quantitative easing. And it's amazing how people use this term. They make up a word for currency debasement. And everybody uses it. Nobody says currency debasement. They all say QE, because that's the word they use. I mean, the level of intellectual degradation in this country it's breathtaking. And they use these words with a straight face. So there's trillions more of these dollars being created. Right now, they're just sitting in banks. The banks don't want to lend, people don't want to borrow the dollars are sitting there. But as they create more of them, they're going to do something with them. They're going to come out in addition to the trillions of dollars from the US coming in. So it's going to be a horrible monetary situation. So what's the government going to do about this? Well, they're doing it now. I don't know how many of you people are actually involved in the financial markets, but let me tell you something. If you go to almost any foreign country in the world today, and you open up a bank account, which is much harder for anybody anywhere than it used to be. It used to be just give them the money and they give you an account. That's the way it used to be in this country and everywhere. It's not that way anymore. Once you identify yourself as a US citizen or even a US resident, and I speak from experience, I really know what I'm talking about here. I'm boots on the ground when it comes to this stuff. They'll show you the door. Well, maybe not. If it's a large account, and if you fill out forms that declare it to the US government and so forth, yes, maybe. but a lot of places it's just not worth the trouble. So you can forget at this point about having a foreign bank account, even in Canada. You can't open an account in Canada. Convenient, used to be easy, can't be done now. Forget about a brokerage account. Not a real brokerage account. We'll give you an account with a US branch that they deal with. So that's happening. You've got to declare all your assets. Any financial account that you have, even if you open that account somehow, you have to declare it. And if you don't declare it, the penalties are draconian. You just don't want to deal with them. They are horrible. So it's very problematical. Early stages of capital controls. I promise you that as the situation gets out of control, Bubis Americanus is going to demand the government do something, do something. We're losing all our money's being inflation. I can't buy food for prices I can afford. I can't afford the $125 it takes to fill up my pick-em-up truck to drive 2 hours to work every day from a place I can afford to wherever my job is. So what are they going to do? Well, obviously it's the fault of those rich people that have been sending money out of the country and sheltering themselves in foreign bank accounts. So it's going to go from hard to ship money out of this country to near impossible. So let me give you a piece of advice. And if you don't remember anything else that I say, remember this. You better do something. You better do something. You better do it now while it's still possible, even if hard and inconvenient, because it's going to be impossible and dangerous in the future. Absolutely plan your life around that. And if you haven't done anything about it and you don't do anything now, you're going to get what you deserve, okay? And I'm sorry to say this to a group of anarchists, but this is just practical advice. Oh, also, with the government running these gigantic deficits, which incidentally are not going to go down, they are going to go up for all kinds of reasons that I want to go into now, they're going to need an extra tax. Well, what kind of a tax? Oh, wait a minute. An asset tax, because that's only going to affect the rich people. There'll be an exemption of $500,000 a year, so the mob, which is to say 80%, 90% of the people in the country aren't going to be subject to it, at least not initially, just like the original income tax. There's going to be an asset tax. 0.5%, 1%, maybe 2% per year of all your assets. Okay? So what are you going to do about this? It's going to happen. It's absolutely baked in the cake. So, of course, the last thing. How could I almost forget this? It's that when the going gets tough, the government, I mean, if you watch these vice presidential debates last night, I forced myself to do it. And I had to gag myself with a spoon after they were over. But there's going to be another war. Absolutely. It's just, this is history repeating itself with a variation. It's like the 1930s, where if you looked around, you could see, yeah, there's going to be a war. And this is exactly the way it's building up right now. So the next real or imagined incident, there's going to be lots of new laws, lots of problems, and so forth. And let me tell you something. You people, and me too, are on the watch list. If you're an enemy of the state or suspected of just not pulling with everybody else, you're in a lot of trouble. You don't want to be here. You really don't. Your neighbors are going to squeal on you. You know, you walk into a Walmart now. What's the sign you see? See something, say something. And they do. So we're just in the early stages of all this stuff. This is just starting. We're in the eye of the hurricane. We went through the leading edge of the hurricane in 2008, 2009. Print up a whole bunch of money, makes people feel better. We're in the eye of the storm. We are going to come out through the other end of the storm, and it's going to be vastly worse than it was back in those days, if you recall what it was like in 2008, 2009. Much worse, with lots more laws, lots of social problems, and a war. Why? Because it's not the government's fault, it's somebody else's fault. It's those damn Chinese for creating all that cheap stuff that people like that's in Walmart. It's their fault for unemploying our workers. It's those damned Arabs for charging too much for their oil. Who the hell knows? They'll come up with somebody I'm probably not even thinking of. And at that point, if you're not one of the chimpanzees that's pulling with all the others against the enemy, the new enemy group, you're in trouble. Why do you think H.L. Mencken dummied up during World War I and World War II both? He didn't want to get lynched. And the society in those days was much more stable and much more pro-freedom, economic and social, than it is today. Somebody tell me I'm wrong. I mean, what am I missing? So, here's my advice. Here's what you should do. I think you should make as much money as you can, as quickly as you can. This is a problem that I've always had with libertarians, incidentally. Libertarians are intellectuals. They're like Karl Marx. And you know what Mrs. Marx said to Karl. This is apocryphal, but I'm sure it's true. She said, Karl, stop writing about capital and make some of it. So, I'm tired of seeing penniless libertarians that talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, okay? So, get yourself a bunch of money, figure out some goods and services that you can provide to other people, grab the money and get the money out of the country, number one. Number two, if you don't want to get washed away in the flood, I suggest you make arrangements to get yourself out of the country too, or at least have a crib outside, so if the going gets tough, as it always gets tough in every damn country in the world, this country's been so lucky that nothing's happened so far. But it's gonna. So if you're not prepared, it's gonna be big trouble, especially for you people who are not among the great masses that believe all the things they're told. You'll be pinpointed as troublemakers. I know that I am. So I suggest you prepare on that. Make money, get it out of the country while it's still legal and possible. Okay, hard, but legal and possible. So this is practical advice. I'm supposed to talk tomorrow at this banquet dinner. You got to sing for your rubber chicken around here, so I'll do that again tomorrow. And I want to talk to you, if I can, about what I'm doing personally for my hobby. This has been a hobby of mine for 30 years. And I want to talk to you about my hobby. It's kind of amusing. It's kind of fun. I think you'll like to hear it. So, I don't know. Those are just some general thoughts. I could probably ramble on as long as Fidel Castro, but who wants that? So, question or two? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Casey, I'm a 20-year-old female college student. How am I able to do anything about my monetary situation? I have no money. Is it possible for individuals like myself who literally have the means to do, have no means to do anything, do something? Please educate me on how.
Well, that's a good question. You gotta produce a good or service that other people are willing to buy. Now, if you're a completely unskilled but good-looking female, you can. But let's not go there. Look, what you got to do is the only thing that you take with you, absolutely the only thing you own, are the skills in your hands and the knowledge in your mind. That's all you own. The rest of it, they can take away from you, and they very well might. There are all kinds of people in all kinds of countries, just within the living memory of those of us here, who've lost absolutely everything, and they had to start all over again. Now you are luckier than most of them, because you're young, you've got sound philosophical ideas, you're going to be in much better shape. But what you got to do is arm yourself with specific marketable skills and knowledge. What's that mean? Well, you got to learn stuff. And I don't mean the kind of bullshit you get by going to college. That's worthless. You got to read a lot of books. You've got to become expert in not just one thing, but several things.